22 attorneys general from Democratic states filed 2 lawsuits to stop President Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship here in the U.S. of A.
Here's the rule in the 14th Amendment. Everyone born here is a citizen, period, full stop. The idea that a president would seek to undermine the Constitution with an executive order is an assault on the basic idea that we live under the rule of law.
The plain language of the Constitution is clear, and this order is plainly unconstitutional.
Well, hold your horses. Let's talk to constitutional law attorney and former federal prosecutor Katie Cherkosky. She joins us right now. Katie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. 14th Amendment, ratified after the Civil War. It had to do with people who were enslaved. What does it say?
Well, essentially, the 14th Amendment says that anyone born or naturalized in the United States and who is subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a citizen.
Right.
And interestingly, the Supreme Court has never specifically ruled on whether the children of illegal or unlawful residents in the United States are automatically entitled to citizenship. Right. Now, that's how the government has interpreted that for many years. But the one Supreme Court case that everybody relies upon over 120 years ago actually dealt with the child of lawful permanent residence, which Trump's order still allows for birthright citizenship.
So the Constitution says people born here, but over the years, you know, it's been, okay, a baby was born here because the mother or the parents came into the country to have the baby, and that would essentially establish citizenship for the whole family. And then we've heard stories about how, okay, if there's one kid born there, then they can bring in their whole family. I think that is at the core of what he's trying to stop.
Well, I think that's exactly right. I think at the time of the 14th Amendment being ratified, obviously that was in light of ensuring that descendants of slaves were entitled to citizenship. And there wasn't this idea of this mass immigration coming over here automatically being entitled to citizenship.
Right.
And to be clear, birthright citizenship still exists in this country, as it always has. However, the limitations on the status of the parents, if not at least one of them is not a lawful permanent resident or a citizen, then under this order, they do not automatically get citizenship. Does not mean that they're not able to get that eventually, but that's what this order suggests, is that the 14th Amendment does not automatically entitle all those people to that.
The whole family. So this is going to wind up before the Supreme Court. I'll bet you $1 at the end they'll say anybody born here, they still have, unless they change the Constitution, which is doubtful, they are a citizen, but the family, probably not. It's interesting. I'm sure you're paying attention to what is happening in Arizona. You know, now deportation raids are going to start where they pick up people who have committed felonies and broken the law and violent crime and stuff like that. The governor and the attorney general, not on the same page. However, the Republican legislature in Arizona has been, and they've passed what is referred to as, they're considering the Arizona ICE Act. And what that would do is, we've got a graphic, it would require sheriff's departments and Arizona Department of Corrections to enter into deals and cooperate with ICE. It also would require law enforcement to comply with ICE detainers, would detain and direct additional funding to local law enforcement. That's the kind of help the feds actually need.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, at this point, we have this unprecedented immigration crisis. There's going to have to be a hierarchy of essentially targeting people who are here unlawfully, who have already broken the laws. And so I think that's vital for the cooperation from these states. Absolutely.
You know, it's interesting. And we were talking a little bit about this about 20 minutes ago, Katie. Wall Street Journal's got a great piece. It's the lead story right now on their opening page. And it talks about how CEOs are trying to figure out, after this blizzard of executive orders, how they need to react as companies and go forward. For instance, CEOs have started their own war rooms to look at how these different tax policies and tariff policies would impact them. But also there is one company that has a 24-hour hotline if, for instance, somebody, a client or one of their businesses is involved in a workplace raid. It's smart that corporations are finally getting on board saying, okay, if this is the way it's going to be, how do we operate legally within the confines of these new executive orders?
Well, I think that the message has been sent and received that there is going to be enforcement. There's going to be law and order here after 4 years of essential chaos. And so certainly President Trump has been in office for a couple of days now, and he has hit the ground running.
Right.
There has been so many changes, which he has promised, and he has followed through on, and he's taking action significantly every day in that direction.
Right. See, now you just hit on something that's so important. These are things that he promised. You know, if somebody has not been watching, didn't watch him during the campaign, and they said, oh, Joe Biden's going to win, then, oh, Kamala Harris is going to win, and they weren't paying attention. These are things he's been talking about for a very long time. And he said, on day one, I'm going to do it. And on day one, he did a lot.
Absolutely. I mean, they say talk is cheap, but he's taken action there, and it really goes to show that this is going to be a new era. And I think that's what a lot of people were hoping for. And so this is motivating.
Okay, so he promised it. Exit question. The Democrats are going to sue him on everything they can.
Absolutely. And there's going to be challenges. And as with the birthright citizenship, very unique, unprecedented order. But again, SCOTUS has never officially weighed in on that. So people can determine what they want because of the practice. But there's certainly open legal questions there that need to be looked at.
Well, you know what? If Chief Justice John Roberts is watching right now, give us a call. 888-TEL-FOX. Tell us what's going to happen. Katie, he won't. He doesn't get up for another 15 minutes. Katie, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.